This is the Improved Photography Podcast, episode number 171. Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Improved Photography Podcast, your weekly dose of photography knowledge. We have a lot of cool stuff to talk with you about today. We're going to talk about getting sharper images for your star trail photography. We're going to talk about a couple new products and answer a bunch of listener questions. And to talk about today's topics, I am joined by Mr. Dale Rogers from Down Under. Hey, Dale.
G'day, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Well, can you just kind of introduce yourself in a couple sentences to the listeners that may not be familiar with you?
No worries. I live on Phillip Island down in Australia. That's about as far south as you can go in Australia. I'm a wildlife and a landscape photographer. My wife and I run a business called Photo Rangers, where we do an adventure-based photography workshops just about every weekend here. You could call me a reformed Canon shooter. I have sold all my Canons and now shoot exclusively Fuji.
Oh, very cool. And which Fuji camera are you shooting?
So I use the XT1 and the XT10 as a backup.
Okay. And how do you like it? Do you think you skipped over the X Pro 2? Is there a reason you've skipped over that? Are you waiting for the XT2 or what?
Well, Jim, I'm waiting for that XT2. So I've shot with the X Pro 1, and I wasn't a big fan of the style of the camera, the rangefinder style. So I'm holding out. I'm hoping that come June, we've got another killer XT camera ready to go.
Well, very cool. Well, we have a bunch of listener questions to talk about today. First question comes from Jesse Culver, who is looking for suggestions on where to find newborn photography props. And this is a great question for me because my wife is due on July 7th. We're going to have a baby girl. We have two boys, and now we have a girl coming. And so I've been looking for some baby photography props. I have a few that I've used in other shoots, but I'm not great by any means at baby photography. It's not my strong suit. But you know, when you're having a baby, you've got to try it, right? So I've done shoots with my two boys when they were born, and so I was looking for new props. You can find quite a few on Amazon if you just search baby photography props, but the prices are kind of weirdly high for them. You know, like a little basket, you know, like $45 to put the baby in. It's just really, really high. And so I went over to eBay, which I don't use real often, and I found a lot of different things. If you just search baby props on eBay, I found much better prices and a lot wider variety. Have you done anything with that, Dale?
I haven't shot babies before, or I should say I haven't photographed babies before. I've seen lots of pictures, and for me, it looks like a lot of times what works best is what you've got that is laying around or nearby, or that may have some significance to the parents.
Yeah, that's
so
a good idea.
So it could be, if someone's out living in the country and on a farm, it could be things that you might normally find around a farm, like an old lamb's wool or a wicker basket or a bucket or an old rickety-looking wagon, little red wagon or something like that.
Very cool. The next question comes from Josh McGinnis, who asks if anybody has used the Yongnuo Ice Light yet. So the Ice Light comes from Westcott. It's it's like a lightsaber. It's about as long as your arm, I guess, and it has a bunch of LED lights in it that you can use just in this long stick to light up somebody for a portrait or lots of different things. Now I tried one and I could not convince myself to buy it. It's like $450 for this little LED light stick. Super expensive. However, I did go to a hardware store, just like a Lowe's, Home Depot, or a car repair store, and they have the exact same thing. An arm length stick with LED lights that you can use just for quick and dirty lighting anywhere. I have used it in a few shoots, and it works quite well. They're daylight balanced. The only problem with the hardware ones is you don't get that frosted tube to kind of spread out the lights. And so sometimes in a reflection, like you can see each of the LEDs. So to fix that, just wrap some wax paper around it. as long as you don't have as long as you're not too picky about how you look as a photographer and you're just looking for good results, it's actually really cool. The problem that I've had with it is it just produces a very odd light. Both when I use the Westcott Ice Light, the actual one that I tried for a while at a conference, and this one, really the Westcott against this hardware one, the difference is now negligible. The light is about the same. But it's just weird because it's just one long strip of light. And so it just looks a little bit funny in portraits if you put the light very close. If you put the light very far away and we're just getting a general light everywhere, it's fine. I don't know. I'm not wild on it. You know who loves them, though, is Erica Kay. She loves using her Westcott Ice Light, and she does some great stuff with it. Just for me, it wasn't quite the tool that I like. Anyway, Yongnuo is now making an equivalent of an ice light. They call it the Yongnuo YN360 handheld LED video light, and it's only $100 instead of $450. So it looks like an interesting product, but I would exercise a little bit of caution on this one. At least for me, I didn't love the quality of the light from either. It's just kind of odd to just get that one line of light coming in. What do you think about it, Dale?
Well, this is one that we're going to try. So we've talked about the Yongnuo Ice Light. I mean, like a lot of things in Australia, products are much more expensive here for us. And that Westcott one was just out of the league for what we want to use it for. But the Yongnuo, we're going to give that one a run. Cecilia can use it in a portrait photography, and I think I might try it as a lightsaber.
That's right, because that's a lot more helpful than anything else. All right, Scott Nissen asks how to get better separation between the subject and the backdrop. So he's shooting like a school portrait kind of thing, and he has the kid sitting there, and then behind him, one of those blue cloud background kind of deals. And he's wondering how much space he really needs between the two. With light, you can create a lot of separation, even if that actual separation isn't there. And so this really depends on a lot on how you have your lighting set up. If you have lights on the background, blasting the background so it's bright, then you're probably going to have to be a little bit further away from the backdrop, because then the model is going to get some spillage from that light off the background, that blue light coming onto the edges of their hair and their arms, things like that. But if you don't have much light on the background, you can usually get closer. You can have the subject a little bit closer to the background because the light is the flash or the constant light, whichever you're using, is going to affect the subject more than the background. And so that disparity in the exposure on the two already creates a little bit of a feeling of separation. But you don't have to be super far away. Most of the backgrounds you see these days are just really cheap and junky looking, and so you'd want it a little bit further back so that you can put it slightly out of focus, because they're just not real pretty to have in focus. But if you have a real high quality backdrop and it looks good, you could probably get away with it being a little bit closer. Do you shoot much on a backdrop, Dale?
No, that's not something that I do, but I had a look at, I think Scott had an example there, and I had a look at that one, and what I would say is that it looked okay to me. I might want to soften that light just a hair. But otherwise, I wouldn't be too fussed about that particular photo.
Very good. Well, Jose Martinez says that he is a new photographer, and he's wondering which version of Adobe Photoshop to purchase. And so we take this question every couple months because I think the answer changes as time goes on. When Adobe first announced the Creative Cloud, where you're paying a subscription price to get Photoshop and Lightroom, it's $9.99 a month, and you get the full version of Photoshop and the full version of Lightroom. But as soon as you stop paying, all your software is gone. And so I was hesitant about the Creative Cloud, and I still have some hesitations about it. But in general, I think this was a good move for Adobe and a good move for photographers. You can purchase the full version of Photoshop outright. It's going to cost you a ton of money, though. and that may not last long. And so I think it's definitely the Creative Cloud if you're getting the full version of Photoshop. Then the second question is, do you want to get the full version of Photoshop or Photoshop Elements? Have you played around with Elements much, Dale?
I haven't had Elements. I mean, what I would say is the Creative Cloud version is, for me, the way to go because I think it's excellent value for money, and it's frequently updated. And I just think that whether you're beginning or whether you're advanced, that is the easiest way to get into editing because you get the Photoshop and the Lightroom suite together.
Yeah, I used to recommend Adobe Photoshop Elements as your first version of Photoshop. And my thinking on that was it only costs $70, and sometimes you get it free with another piece of software because they're trying to get you on the hook liking those Adobe products. And so I thought it was a good idea, and it was, I think, for a long time. But, and Adobe Photoshop Elements has, 90% of what you can do in Photoshop, the full version, you can also do in Photoshop Elements. The problem is each one of the tools is just slightly dumbed down to make it easier to use. And so now that you can get Photoshop on a subscription, I wouldn't recommend starting with Photoshop Elements because you're going to learn to use the tools one way, and then when you finally do move over to the full version, everything works different. And it's not that you're starting over, but I feel like it can really slow down your progress.
That's right.
Because you've learned the workarounds for Elements, and that might kind of ingrain bad habits where the tool just works different in the full version.
Yeah, better to establish good habits in the very beginning.
And it's not so much money. $9.99 a month or $79. It's going to take the better part of a year before you're even. And a new version of Photoshop Elements comes out almost every year. And so, really, at that point, if you're staying current with Photoshop Elements, you almost might as well get the full version of Photoshop. I don't love getting monthly expenses and racking those up, but that one just really makes sense. If you're serious about your photography at all, it makes a lot of sense. All right, Jesse Culver also asks how he can get a signature in Lightroom to put on his photos. He tried writing his name on a piece of paper on a white piece of paper and then scanning it in and then putting it in, but then it puts the white box of the white piece of paper. So how might you do that, Dale?
Yep. Look, the way I'd do that is I'd get a good marker, good black marker, write my name on a piece of white paper. I'd scan the paper and remove the white in Photoshop, so remove that color and save it as a PNG document. So crop it down to where you just got your signature in the image and save it with a transparent background as a PNG.
Yeah, so the proper tool for doing this in Photoshop is going to be the Tragic Wand. The Magic Wand tool is the actual name of it. It's the one that you can click on any specific color, and it will find everything of that color in the page, and you can delete it, for example, or do whatever you want with it. Just allows you to select a certain color. Now, photographers use this a lot where it probably isn't the right tool. If somebody's on a white background and you're trying to cut them out, it's not the right. It's just not a great tool for this. Usually, you're going to want the quick selection tool for something like that. However, when you have text on a piece of paper, there's just nothing that beats the Magic Wand for doing this. It's really just an excellent tool if this is what you're trying to do. But you have to remember the file format. Dale said you want to save this as a PNG, and that's exactly right. A JPEG, which is the most common image file, will not allow transparency. And so it's got to put it on some color. It will have your signature there that you cut out in Photoshop, but if you save it as a JPEG, it's going to put some kind of color behind it. It can't do transparent. And so if you save it as a ping, then it can do that transparency and you're set to go. You could also save it as a GIF file that does transparency, but a ping is just better for this. The text is going to look a lot sharper with the same file size. All right. Well, that does it for our listener questions for this week. Thank you to those of you who have submitted them. I want to give a little report on Improved Photography Plus. I have a ton of you guys asking questions about it and how everything is working. So Improve Photography Plus is our new website that for $19.95 a month, with a 14-day trial, you can get almost everything that Improve Photography produces. It is awesome. If you were to go buy all of the products that Improve Photography makes, all the past Lightroom steals, all the courses we have on photo classes, the ebooks, the Nick's sky replacement tutorial. I mean, if you were just to go crazy and get everything, it would cost almost $2,000. And so we have some excellent products in there that really can be very helpful for photographers, but you can really only buy them piece by piece because that's a lot of money. And so I created Improve Photography Plus that you can get the whole everything for $19.95 a month. It really makes a lot of sense. And then after you start Improve Photography Plus, once you're signed up, and there's a 14-day free trial that you can test it out, to watch all the video tutorials that we're always talking about, download Lightroom presets. You have the option, if you would like, to switch your membership over to Improve Photography Plus Mentoring. And that's, you still get all of the products and everything, but this is $79 a month, and you work directly with the podcast hosts. You can work with me or with Nick or Erica or Brian or Majid. We're all coming online. Well, I started the Improve Photography Plus mentoring as the first mentor on there and opened up the spots, and it sold out in 16 minutes. It was done.
Wow.
On the very first day we launched Improve Photography Plus, 16 minutes in, it was done. Which was awesome, and it's been so fun. I've been doing calls all day long with people in my mentoring group, just talking to them, getting to know them, looking at their photos, and helping them with the issues they're having. It's been super cool. But
and that's probably the fastest way to improve your photography is to get someone to give you direct feedback and mentoring. You can watch the videos and you can read and you can go out and shoot, but unless someone's actually giving you that kind of constructive feedback, it's hard to know exactly what you need to change or adjust or work on. So that's a fantastic idea.
Yeah, it's really like, if you're learning to drive, you can read the manual, you can watch other people drive, you can do everything else. But at some point, you're going to have to sit in the driver's seat, take the photos, and have somebody next to you saying, ooh, actually not 70 miles an hour in the neighborhood, You
That's
need
right.
somebody
Well,
next to you to help you through those things, just like learning
I read my
anything else.
camera manual, and why can't I take a shot like Jim?
Yeah, well, and it is frustrating. And it's frustrating for me too. Like it feels like I'm doing everything right when I'm out there taking the photos, but I know it just doesn't have that finished feel. And so mentoring through, either a paid workshop or Improve Photography Plus mentoring really is an excellent way of learning. Anyway, it sold out in 16 minutes, but what I'm announcing today is that we are opening up more slots. Once you're a member of Improve Photography Plus, in your menu bar, there's going to be a little item that says upgrade to mentoring once you've already signed up for Improve Photography Plus. And I have a little countdown there for the day that we are going to add more spots and let more people in. But we're not going to talk about it all the time, but I want to remind you that it's there. We're always releasing new products. In fact, I just released a new video tutorial today on Improve Photography Plus that's exclusive to Improve Photography Plus. And so all of that stuff, all of the stuff we're talking about that you've heard on the podcast for years, you can go get it right now with a free 14-day trial if you check it out at improvephotographyplus.com. So I just wanted to give that update because we are getting slammed with questions about how it's working and if you have to sign up for Improve Photography Plus and then get into the mentoring anyway. So that's what it's doing. Oh, and one more thing. We announced a free photography workshop in Glacier National Park, Montana. This one's on my bucket list of places that I really want to go shoot in September 2016. So those of you who have wanted to get out and shoot with me, come check it out in Glacier National Park, and the details are going to be posted on Improve Photography Plus. So check that out. As soon as you sign up for Improve Photography Plus, it's right there on your dashboard. You'll see the information about our workshop in Glacier National Park coming up, and it is free. Pretty cool. All right, Dale, you wanted to talk a little bit about getting sharper photos at night. What kind of techniques are you using for that?
All right. Well, look, it is. Winter is coming here in Oz, and it means shorter days and much longer nights. So, we're putting away the surfboards and breaking out the tripods and flashlights. And as photo rangers, we do lots of star workshops during the winter. And what we find is that, regardless of your shooting experience, getting a good sharp star while you're out in the nice crisp cold winter air is difficult. And I just want to talk about some different ways to do that and some different things that you can do. So anything from how we get infinity focus to using a tripod to selecting the right shutter speed. So just out of curiosity, Jim, do you pre-focus before you run out and do some star shots, or do you use your back screen focus?
Well, my favorite way to do it when I'm focusing at night, and those of you who haven't tried it, the reason this is so different is when it's dark, your camera can't autofocus. And so so one option is you can focus before it gets to night and just lock your focus in. I usually don't do that
Yep.
because I'm always afraid I'm going to bump the lens at
Well, you
some
know what?
point and mess it up. So my favorite way to focus at night is either focus on the moon or a very distant, city light or something, any tiny little light, a house light a mile away. And if I can focus on any bright light in the distance, that's my favorite way to do it.
Yeah, exactly. And I always carry a little thing of gaffer tape. So we'll focus before it gets too dark, and on some of the lenses we just tape them down. That way we don't accidentally bump the focal, the focus ring.
There you go.
And the other thing that I like to do is get people who are using a lens that has a distance meter on it, and they usually have an infinity mark on that meter, usually setting up on top of the lens, is to focus on infinity before it gets too dark and have a look and see exactly where that where that lines up on the distance meter. Because what I find is that infinity mark isn't always exact. So we're usually, depending upon the lens, you're a millimeter one side of that focus mark. So I think it's good to know for your particular lens, where is your infinity focus, particularly if you've got a meter on the top. So
Yeah, well,
the
now
other
one
thing,
one issue you may find by doing that is it depends what you're zoomed into. In theory, if it's an internal focus lens, if I zoom from 10 millimeters to 24 millimeters, the focus has not changed. The zoom has, but the focus has not. But it doesn't really work that way. It always seems to be a little bit one way
yeah,
or the
that's
other.
true.
And so if you marked it, it would work well for a prime, but not necessarily for a zoom. Now, one thing I would like to try is to test out. I have a prime lens for my Fuji that I use for night photography. If I remember right, it's a 16 millimeter f1.4. Is that right?
Yep, that's it. That's
Um,
it. The weather resistant one.
Yeah. And so it's a great lens for night photography because it's wide and it's fast.
Mm.
And so I would be interested in checking if if the little focus meter is correct on it, because it's a prime lens. And so you'd think they would get it right. The problem is with a zoom that, it has marked where the infinity is, but it depends what you're zoomed into. So it's never quite right.
That's right. And I believe that lens doesn't actually have the distance meter on the lens. It's actually in camera, isn't it?
Ah, yes, that's right. Yep, I think you're right.
Yeah. So, and what I found on the Fuji is that the meter in the camera is pretty accurate. I'm fairly confident with that. But I do know that when I was shooting Canon and using the L series lenses, that often the infinity focus wasn't exactly on the line. So I always ask people to make sure they know where infinity focus is. So the
Yeah,
other
I
method
found
was,
that to be
yep.
more of a problem with Canons. One time I was shooting with Brian McGuckin in Iceland, and we found that out the hard way. He wasn't getting it; just wasn't sharp, and so he said, "Hey, what's going on?" And so we looked at it together, and it was right on the infinity symbol, and I wasn't even sure what it was because I'd shot Nikon for years, and
Yep.
I hadn't had issues with that, at least this particular Nikon lenses that I was most used to. I could put it on the infinity symbol and it was right. I could go pretty confident with that. But on the Canon 16 to 35 that he was using, it just wasn't even close. Everything looked soft.
Well, that's right. So the 16 to 35 and the 17 to 40 are notorious for that. Last weekend I had 4 Canon shooters, and we were moving lenses, every one of them. It was not right on the infinity. It was either a little to the left or a little to the right. So I think that can make a big difference in your shot.
And isn't that nice on the Fuji that you get to see the infinity symbol in the viewfinder right there? I just really love that.
I love standing next to someone with a full frame camera with the Fuji taking shots of the Milky Way. It's a great feeling when they look over the back of the camera and they go, "What kind of camera is that again?"
You're like, wait, I didn't know mirrorless had this whole low light thing. It does extremely well.
Yeah, that's right. It came out, and then the images look fantastic as well. So that's a bit about focus. You mentioned the back screen focus, and I think that's important to know how to zoom in and get that focus as well. The other thing that I find people doing is they're using a tripod, but they set the tripod up and then they raise that center column up. Mm-hmm. And I find as soon as that center column goes up, and we're typically in a coastal setting and on a limestone reef or something like that, and we've usually got quite a bit of wind, and that thing, you might as well not even have the tripod, I think. So it's about just setting your tripod up and getting it nice and stable, making sure that if you can avoid raising that center column, leave it down.
Yeah, I definitely prefer a tripod that's tall enough for me, that gets up to a comfortable height without a center column. In fact, I prefer to have a tripod that doesn't even have a center column because that's just added weight at that point. But some tripods, can do this well. Like the three-legged thing tripods are very short unless you're using that center column. And they're pretty steady. A lot of photographers like those.
Yeah. Most of them that I see, when you raise that thing up and you just give it a little wiggle, it just shakes. And that's what we try to avoid. The last thing that I like to look at is shutter speed. And we know that if you leave that shutter open too long at night, you're going to get stars that look like emu eggs and boomerangs. So,
that's exactly how I would have described it, by the way. Emu eggs. Yeah, I was like, sometimes I just look at a picture, I'm like, emu egg and boomerang.
Exactly. That's right. Well, that's what they look like, and that's how we describe them, isn't it? But I get asked quite a bit of how long should I leave my shutter open? What's the appropriate shutter length? And we can talk about the 500 rule, which is you divide your focal length by 5, or you divide 500 by your focal length. But that gets a little bit complicated when you're talking about crop sensors and then trying to make that calculation. So do you got any tips on that, Jim?
Well, I don't really love the 500 rule. One, for the reason that you already cited about how it's different depending on the crop factor of your camera. And what this is trying to do is just telling you how long of a shutter speed you can use and have the stars look like a perfect circle pinpoint instead of like kind of oblong, because obviously the Earth is rotating. And if we use a longer shutter speed, it's going to move. I don't like the 500 rule because it's just what some dude decided is an acceptable amount of oblongity in your star. And for me, it's too oblong. If you follow the 500 rule, it's still too long at that point. So I usually just keep it really simple. And I know for me, if I'm using a wide angle lens, which I'm doing most of the time with star photography, I'm usually not going to cross 15 seconds. Usually 15 seconds is pretty good for me. At 30 seconds, it's a little bit too oblong. At 20 seconds, it's okay, but I just want it to be this nice little pinprick. And so I usually just say 15 seconds, and almost every time it works. If I'm zoomed into 35 millimeters, maybe that's a little bit too much, but generally, if I'm shooting wide, 15 seconds works for me.
Yeah, and basically that's what we say too. We keep it under 20 seconds. So I might go a little bit longer than 15, but on most lenses you probably don't go over 20 seconds unless you've got just a super ultra wide.
Yeah, and it really depends on how you're going to use the photo. I mean, if you're at 20 seconds instead of 15, and we're going to post this on Facebook, nobody is going to notice. It would be impossible to tell. But if you're going to print this real big, or you might be cropping in, something like that, I like to keep it a little bit tighter. But it's really just kind of your personal preference of how perfectly circular that needs to be.
Exactly. So that's kind of our tips for getting sharp stars at night.
Well, very cool. Well, in every episode, we like to leave you all with a doodad of the week, and I am in Iceland this week with a bunch of listeners of Improved Photography, and also Nick Page and Majid. We're all together shooting, and so I have been using the GlideCam HD 1000 this week. It's a really cool product if you do any videography. Basically, what it is it's I don't even know how to describe it. If you're a videographer, you already know what this is, but it is basically a handle that extends under the camera and allows you to move around the camera and still get the video really silky. Like if you've seen adventure videos of somebody skateboarding or rock climbing or something, and you see people, going up the stairs and the video still just looks buttery smooth as they're doing it. Obviously, if you were just holding the camera in your hand, it would be jostling up and down, going crazy. But this glide camera is a extra handle with a weight at the bottom that holds the camera, and like you can't shake the video. Like it's just super buttery smooth. It's a little bit expensive. This costs about I bought one for $280 that was used, and I bought a brand new one for $370. I got two of them, and so it's more expensive. You'll find lots of them for $100 on Amazon, the lesser expensive brands. But I decided, every time I try to save money on something like that, I end up just not liking it and then buying the name brand one a little bit later. So I thought, I'm going to bite the bullet and buy once and buy right. And so I got it, and it is really, really cool. The HD 1000 is perfect if you have a mirrorless camera, a real lightweight, a Canon Rebel, good choice. And then they have the 2000, 3000, 4000, depending on how heavy your camera is. If you're shooting a DSLR, you're probably going to be in the HD 2000 or HD 4000, just depending on how much weight it actually needs to hold. But it's small, lightweight, really well built, and if you watch more tutorials on Improved Photography Plus and they're starting to look really buttery smooth, you're like, oh yeah, that's the HD 1000.
So you got any specific plan for that in Iceland? Is there an adventure that you're going to bring it out on, or?
Well, I'm just photographing a whole bunch of videos of me, Nick, and Majid as we're just taking pictures there. And so just for future content, future products that I make in YouTube videos, I just wanted to have nice looking videos as we're doing it. So everything you'll see on YouTube on an Improved Photography Plus in the next few months should be a little bit more stable for you. There's not like any specific, I'm not like making a video of Iceland. It's really just for doing tutorials and stuff. But if you have like a kid that does parkour or something like that, you're doing adventure photography and video, even a wedding, this would be an excellent item if you're adding a little bit of video into your wedding. It's pretty darn cool.
Sounds like a great doodad.
All right, what do you have for us?
Okay, well, look, I listen to your doodads every week, and I hear some really great things, and when I go to look for them, I just can't find them.
Isn't that frustrating in different
that's
countries?
Right. Living on an island too, that makes it even more difficult, or it's just way too expensive to order. But I'm really excited because I saw something that reminded me of Nick. I know that Nick has he's always in pursuit of warm feet, and he talks about the socks that he's purchased, and I think he's had some waterproof ones the last time I heard him talk. But I found a Heat Holders brand Ultimate Thermal Socks. Now, there's two things I really like about these socks. The first is I can find them in our local country grocery store, $18. So I thought that's a bloody ripper. That's a good price.
That is a bloody ripper. That's exactly what I was gonna say. Emu eggs and boomerangs and bloody rippers.
There you go.
See, I love having an Aussie on the show. This is great.
Yeah, it is. And it's great being here. But look, these socks, I use them at night. In the wintertime, they say they're 7 times warmer than regular socks and 3 times warmer than thermals. Don't know about that, but all I know is that when I stick them on, my feet get hot. So I just wanted to share that. Hopefully, some of the Aussie listeners out there, you can go to your local IGA and pick up heat holders for $18. They'll keep your feet warm this winter while you're out shooting the Milky Way.
Well, very cool. I actually own some of these socks.
Let's go.
I do. It's kind of funny. We have matching socks. This is cute. I have some of these. I bought these before we went to Yellowstone this last year when we did our workshop out there, and they do the job. Very nice. They are like super thick, like really thick socks, but they kind of squish. You know, it doesn't make it too big for your boot, but they are very thick socks. Really nice. It's like a regular sock on the outside. The material feels kind of regular, but then on the inside it has this like loose felt kind of material. I don't know how else to describe it.
That's right. Well, it feels like wool, but it's not wool. It's a synthetic material that is made in some way to trap the heat.
Yeah.
But you're right. They are very snug in the boot, but they're very hot.
And well, I am going to cheat again this week. I've been cheating a lot lately, but I wanted to also recommend this Polaroid remote-controlled 360-degree Panorama Panhead. This is a really inexpensive little device. If you're shooting panoramas or time-lapse or something where you just want the camera to slowly pan, this is really cool. It's very small, you know, handheld. It has a little remote control. It wouldn't work for a DSLR, but for a cell phone or a GoPro, this thing is really neat. Polaroid sent me this for free. And I thought, you know, a little, you know, egg timer thing, you know, it's just going to spin the camera, but this is really cool. I've been kind of excited by it. I'm using this guy in Iceland, just with my cell phone. I have a little bracket to attach my cell phone to a little tripod holder. And like, if I want to get like a cool little video, just a nice smooth pan, smoother than I can do hand holding it. This is a pretty cool little device. So something to check out. It's not very expensive at all. It's the Polaroid remote controlled 360-degree Panorama Panhead.
Wow. And that just fits on your tripod.
Well, it has its own little base. So you could set it on the ground, set it on a shelf, whatever. It has its own little base, and then it just mechanically spins. You know, it's battery powered.
Sounds great.
Well, Dale, it has been a pleasure having you on the podcast this week. You can check out everything that Dale has going on at, let's see if I can get it right, photorangers.com.au. Is that right?
That's correct.
All right. Well, if you are in the land down under, definitely want to check out. Looks like you have a lot of great workshops going on down there. And we hope to talk with you again soon. And all the listeners, thanks for joining us and for supporting everything that we do. I'm loving life in Iceland this week, shooting with a bunch of you. And I will be back next week. And I'm sure me, Nick, and Majid will be recounting our adventures here. Some cool stuff. Thanks, everybody, and we'll see you.
Fantastic. See ya.